Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton,
And this is Nate Drolet.
and together we form Yogi Berra.
Wait, is that a duo?
Nope,
Okay.
it's one person.
Oh, I actually know why you did it this time.
Trying to throw you an easy one here.
This is because I love phrases, and Yogi Berra has a bunch of great ones.
Yeah, things like you can observe a lot just by watching.
Yeah.
And if you come to a fork in the road, take it.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
You know, there's a urban legend that someone asked him if he wanted his pizza cut into 8 slices. He said, "No, cut it into 4. I don't think I'm hungry enough for 8."
I have heard something like that. And I've heard the phrase, "It ain't over till it's over," attributed to him. I don't know if that's true or not, but that goes right along with this episode.
Yeah.
We're talking about terrible advice that's actually great when it comes down to it. And almost across the board, people get frustrated when you say these things, but they're true.
Yeah.
So.
That's why they're said so much. And they all seem very obvious.
Yeah. So many times when people are climbing and they're like, "Where do I go?" I'm like, "Up."
You know, and roughly 85% of the time, I'm going to say you're probably right on that one.
Most of the time. This just occurred to me. There was a time in Vitavu where I was trying to on-site this route called Flying Buttress. It was a 10B, crazy dihedral, super steep, overhanging both sides, and you're doing this weird stimming. At one point, I was flipped entirely around, so I was facing out and down while stimming. And I'm trying, my gear was all tucked into the corner, and I'm trying to feel for a cam, and I rack my cams in order, but I can't tell what the order is because of the way I'm all crunched into this corner. And I'm like, "Where's the number 3 to my belayer?" And he goes, "Feel for it. It's the blue one." It's like, really? No shit. And it totally lightened up all my anxiety, and I on-sighted for that reason.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I have kind of a funny story. It's not climbing, but of one of these phrases that's still one of my favorites. So this is one of my first kitchen jobs. I'm working with a guy named Lee, and I go to load a whole tray of bacon into the oven because that's how you typically cook bacon in a kitchen.
That's how you cook bacon all the time.
It's a great way to cook bacon. I didn't know this was a thing before working in restaurants. I just pan fry it. So toss the bacon in. I say, "Hey, Lee, how long do I cook this for?" And he said, "Are you going to want to cook it until just before it starts to burn?" And it took me 3 seconds. I was like, "Yeah, that's good advice." I was like, "God damn it." Okay. Yeah. But that's pretty good cooking advice. You're going to want to cook it till just before it starts to burn.
One of the things that sort of predicated this conversation is Nate and I were looking at research on the internet, and I came across a paper that I don't even know if I can say this with a straight face. This paper was identifying the things that contributed to successful climbing performance. And one of the factors that most contributes to climbing performance, according to this paper, is the ability to pass cruxes.
Yes.
#science. That's all I'm going to say about that.
If you get good at passing through cruxes, you're probably going to be a pretty good climber.
Yeah.
They ain't wrong.
And if you don't pass the crux, you're guaranteed that your performance will not be successful.
Facts.
And we have a favorite of this category that we've used quite often, from Dan John, who's been on the podcast before, one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. And that is, the goal is to keep the goal. Much easier said than done.
Yeah. There's a reason we keep repeating it, because it's still true.
Yeah, exactly. Let's jump into these. Our top 3 here. Number 1, this one, some people get really upset at this, especially short people.
They get upset a lot.
I didn't say it. You said it. I'd like to make that clear on the record. I didn't say that. But if it feels big, get your feet higher.
Yeah.
Or go bigger.
Yep.
That seems really obvious, but a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah. You know, the first time I got this advice was I was climbing in the red, trying Convicted, 13A on the undertow wall, trying it, and I keep falling at this one move, and I was getting really stretched out, trying to latch this like kind of smaller edge and falling. And then all of a sudden, Porter Gerard walks up, and this was right when he was first getting back into climbing.
Mm-hmm.
And Porter, you know, bolted most of the red, at least, you know, in the first decade of it being in existence. And Porter was just like, yeah, you're going to want to get your feet up there, which is also how he talks. And I got my feet up, and I like sent the next go, and I was like, oh my God, this guy's just a master.
Savant.
So yes. And I think I was climbing with Dario, and he's just like, I mean, yeah, the move was big. You just need to get your feet up. I was like, you know, I guess that's good advice. Yeah. And like, you can almost always get your feet higher. Like, it may be really awkward. It may be a heel hook above your head. Like, it may feel crunched, but you almost always have higher foot options.
Yeah. What's interesting is I've done a lot of private sessions with people who are much shorter climbers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a drill that we use pretty often called one size fits all, where you climb an established boulder in the gym and you follow the sequence with your hands, use as low a feet as possible or as feet as far away from your hands as possible, try to get really stretched out, and then you climb it the same way, or you climb the same boulder, same hand sequence, but with as bunchy feet as possible. And almost across the board, when I've worked with a shorter climber, I'm like, get your feet higher next try. Or do you think you can get your feet higher? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, I can get my feet higher than you did. You know, why can't you? And I think that it's because they're short climbers. Mm-hmm. They're used to having their feet higher than the average size climber.
Yes.
So they think, oh, I'm really good at climbing in a small box. Mm-hmm. But the box they're climbing in is just small for an average size person.
They're just a small person.
Yeah. And their box, when, you know, adjusted proportionally, is actually a regular size box that they're climbing in. Mm-hmm. And they've never explored super small boxes because they don't have to. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's similar to really tall climbers not being able to keep their feet as low. Like they don't, you know, and it is a bit more challenging because of levers, and they're just so much longer that their body's going to sag away further. They have to keep more tension, blah, 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 tall guy excuse. I have no sympathy.
You're only making friends with the average size climbers right now.
That's okay. Us Vitruvians. Yeah. Like, I've seen this plenty of times too, working with short climbers. Like, it's one of those things. It's like, hey, the shorter you are, the more savvy you need to be with all types of movement. You need to be able to get very extended, but also you need to be like able to explode out of a little cannonball.
Yeah.
And just because it looks like you climb bunchy to other people, you know, like, yeah, if a 6 foot tall guy watches, you know, someone who's 5 foot climbing, they're going to be like, wow, they use such bunched up beta. But really, they're just climbing for the most part.
Right. Yeah, so they're climbing within their natural boxes, whatever those are, most of the time.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when I've watched really tall climbers climb who are really good at leveraging their height and getting really stretched out, when I've remarked on that, very often people are like, well, duh, they're just tall.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you might think that, but that's not true. A lot of tall people are not good at using feet that are far away.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what you said with short people and you using higher feet. Like I love training low feet. That's like one of my favorite styles of climbing.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon. I'll climb with people who are, close to about 6 feet. So a few inches taller than me, who I can do more stretched out moves keeping my feet on than them, because they've always just relied on naturally feeling comfortable in big moves.
Right.
And so they've never really explored stretching it.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. We tend to climb in our own box and we don't stretch it out.
Yeah.
So ball it up.
Yeah. So if a move's big, if a move feels too big, get your feet up.
Get your feet up. Number 2, if you're on a bad hold, keep moving.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite ones. This is, I was given this advice climbing in the red, which there it's maybe more applicable than almost anywhere.
It's very true there.
Because there aren't many bad holds.
Right.
Also, there are so many holds that are chalked up, and everything's like kind of pump oriented.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a good hold coming eventually.
Yeah.
So just if you're on a bad hold, keep moving. But this is true for bouldering. It's true for all sport climbing. Like eventually there's going to be a good hold, or, there's a great rest after you clip the anchors.
Exactly.
Always an option. I like that rest a lot. But yeah, if you're on a bad hold, keep going.
Which is an interesting thing, actually, because people tend to freeze when they hit a bad hold.
Yes.
This hold is horrible. I'm like, then what are you doing there?
Yeah.
Keep climbing. Don't talk to me while you're on it.
Yeah. People, this is such a funny thing, especially with handholds. They put so much focus on when they grab a bad hand, they like go even more slowly. They grab it. They really want to crush this hold and move. Like
Right.
everything becomes deliberate and about this one handhold. Their other hand could be on a jug and both feet could be on ledges, but they're going to put almost all of their intensity into this one poor hold.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Like we have this great like brain body connection between our hand and our mind. And, you really you feel it. You're like, oh, this is small. I need to really try hard. Where really it's like, no, just like hit it, move on.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also, the cousin phrase that I hear a lot of, better hold's coming.
Oh, yep.
It's a really great phrase. You can tell it to yourself. You can, it's a pretty key thing to tell yourself if you're trying to be an onsider.
Mm-hmm.
And you encounter a crux, or you're getting pumped, or you're having a difficult time. If you can just tell yourself, in 2 moves, there's better holds. You may not know it, but if you can tell yourself, it's going to help.
Yeah. So I had an interaction with one of my friends, Sarah Brangos, and I didn't remember this story all that well until I found out she had been retelling it basically like twice a year since this happened, like 6 years ago. So we're climbing at the dark side, and she gets on American Dream. And at this time, she was really kind of scared of climbing. Amazing climber, really great, very strong. But she was more known for down climbing cruxes.
Yeah,
she could surpass and then unsurpass cruxes.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, on like hard rock climbs. You're like, Sarah, you just up and down climbed that V6 in the middle of a route. Well, amazing. So she gets on American Dream, and it's her first go ever on it, and she's on-sighting. And I know this route, or not on-sighting, like flashing. She just wants to do it first try.
Mm-hmm.
Goes through, and the first 2 bolts are like the business. Like once you're off the slab, and then it's like maybe 8 bolts long.
And just hold on.
Hold on. Holds kind of get better.
Yeah.
But really, you're waiting for that big rest that comes after you clip anchors.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of gets through the crux, and she's like, I don't know, Nate. And I was like, keep going, Sarah. Good holds are coming. So she like goes up, gets another clip. I'm like, keep going. They're just going to keep getting better. Gets up, clips another one. And apparently I did this the whole way. I've also learned this is gaslighting. I think that's the term they use these days. She gets up and she falls going for the anchors. Super close. And she was like, God damn it, Nate. Like, there weren't jugs. I was like, well, there weren't crimps. And what's funny was it ended up taking her like another 3 or 4 days to get back to that same high point.
Yeah.
Because she had tried so hard just committing for the idea of like keep moving.
Yep.
So yeah, it ended up taking her a while to get back to it and descend it.
Yeah, totally. I was at the Killer Cave with my friend Scott, and he was climbing on Killer, and he's up there pumped. Ronnie Jenkins comes walking up the trail, which is, mind-boggling seeing Ronnie Jenkins at the Killer Cave out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie just starts yelling up, Jug's coming, Jug's coming. And Scott just keeps climbing. And when he finally does fall, he's like, hey, thanks for the, motivation. It was good to know there was good holds coming. And Ronnie's like, I've never been on that route. I don't know what was happening up there. But it's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're on a bad hold, keep going. Jugs are coming. Good holds are coming.
Yeah. And maybe our favorite, and this is something I've said unironically a number of times without even realizing how ironic it sounds, that it is a Yogi Berra-ism.
Yeah.
But if you want to climb X, you have to try X. And that could be grade, specific route, whatever the weakness is. If you want to climb steeper things, you have to try steeper things.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Was there a time in your climbing where you felt like this was really applicable to you? Like that was kind of the key you needed to turn?
I mean, kind of all the time, really. I like setting goals, I like to advance my goals, and I like number goals. They're easy to set, easy to, kind of measure and point yourself toward.
Yeah.
But I can't climb that number unless I try that number. And any time I've set one of those goals, it's a grade I haven't been on.
Yeah.
And half of the crux is just getting myself to go try those things, because bigger challenges are intimidating a lot of the time. And I mean, even now, I've climbed a few V11s. My big goal is V12. I've only tried a couple of V12s at this point,
Yeah.
3 or 4, something like that. And for me, that's half the crux, is just go get on the thing. I don't think I tried. I think I'd been on 3 514s before I committed to one, and it might have been the first one I tried, actually. So it's a tough thing for me, is get on something that is the big goal. We tend to I tend to anyway, set big goals that I'm a little afraid of. So stepping into that arena where you're nervous is part of the hard thing for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, I remember when I really wanted to climb 513. Like I had this plan. I was like, okay, I'm going to climb my 50th 512 first. I think I had done like 10, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started charging through them, hit 50, and I kind of had started sampling, but they all just felt hard. Like I would try, one once, like not even going with my own now rule of go to the chains twice before you even make any opinion. I'd go halfway up snooker and be like, it's impossible. Like I needed to go do 50 more 512s, stuff like that. And I ended up reaching out to a buddy of mine, Brad Weaver. And I was like, man, Brad, yeah, I don't know. Like it just feels like this huge jump. I don't really know what it is. And he was like, man, if you want to climb 513, you got to climb on 513. And, it's so funny because how obvious.
Right.
But I just took it to heart. I was like, okay, I just reset my focus. I was like, my day goal is how many times can I get to an anchor on 513s each day? Like for a short period, that was my metric.
Mm-hmm.
And initially it was like, oh, I can get 1.5 times to anchors just because of maybe I was tired. And especially working out new beta at a hard grade is hard.
Right.
But then it was like, okay, I can get to the anchors 3 times. Now I've sent one. Now I can get to the anchors 4 times. Now I've sent another one. Kind of things like that. But it very much was, I had to climb on 513 to climb 513.
Yeah. Well, climbing is this interesting thing in that we've made a lot out of how to prepare for the next grade.
Yes.
And it almost never includes climbing on that grade. It's always like, oh, if you want to climb 13A, you should climb a bunch of 12Bs, a handful of Cs, a couple of Ds, and then get on the 13A.
Mm-hmm.
And preparation for a thing lacks the same pressure as the thing, whether we like it or not. You know, it's much easier to go try a bunch of 12Ds and potentially fail than it is to actually try the 513 that you've made this big goal and told your friends about, you know? So I think it's a real trap. And I think this has to be said to get people onto it. And it doesn't mean skip all the other routes and just climb on the grade.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be better prepared if you can climb 12C relatively quickly. You're far better prepared for 513, you know, period.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare, but you also have to put yourself into the arena, give yourself the pressure of actually doing the thing, or you're just going to falter.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think I really like the point you made about how we've built up, you know, such a database in this ideology around preparing for the task.
Yeah.
You know, back when I was breaking to 513, this was the era of, you know, if you want to climb harder, you got to climb more. Like your 8A pyramid, that's how you could tell if you're doing things right. Like, were you getting 100 climbs in a year? Okay, you're moving the needle.
Right.
Like, you know, more is more. But now, like, you know, I definitely wonder now if I was in that same position, trying to go from 512 to 513, if I wouldn't be stuck saying like, oh, well, how much do I need to hang to climb 513? How much,
right?
Like, what's my deadlift? Like, what are my repeaters? Am I doing enough volume, like in the gym? Like, what is my ANCAP score? All these things. And yeah, it would be, like back then I was almost paralyzed by needing enough of a base. And had my friend Brad not been like, hey, you know, if you want to climb 513, you got to climb on 513.
Yeah.
Had he not said that, I might have just been like, we're going to 100 512s. We'll double it. We'll keep doubling until we see progress. Like until I can just basically onsite 513. And I wonder now, just knowing that would have been my natural inclination then, if in today's day,
we're both turning into Yogi Bear right now.
We are, yeah. I wonder if I would have, if not given this same type of insight, if I would have leaned towards, oh, well, I just need to get stronger. I need to get fitter. I need more endurance. I need to like match all of these other criteria first.
Yeah. What you just said makes me wonder how I would have reacted to all the data that's out there now. You know, Lattice has a bunch of data. We've collected a bunch of data, created data, sort of the same thing. And there's this ability to say, oh, the majority of our 12C climbers can hang this amount of time, or can do this many pull-ups, or can do a campus slap at this distance. So if you're far short of one of those metrics, we need to get that metric up before you can climb 512 or 12C. That's a lot of people will make that leap. We try very hard when we're delivering the data to say, this doesn't mean you can't climb these grades. You know, this is just a rough goal for you to shoot for. It's a good general place for us to start in your training. And maybe it ends up being low-hanging fruit for you, and we can make some gains by putting our focus here. But a lot of people take it very seriously, and they need to get their max hang to this certain number before they can even go try the project that they want to try, whatever their goal grade is. And that's just not how it works, but we can easily fall into that trap.
Yeah. It's a very easy trap to fall into, to the point to where, you know, I see now like metrics will even be overvalued than pyramids.
Yeah.
Like the idea of route experience. And this is just going out to everyone who wants to send 13A. Fill in those 12Ds. I see you out there with your 4 12Cs that you've done, and you're jumping to 13A. That's okay. Yeah, I know you got to climb on 13A to send 13A, but you need to send those 12Ds. We see you.
Yeah, and even if you're that person who does send the 13A before doing 12D or before doing 12C even, you still have the option to go back, and that's going to help you, instead of trying to just jump ahead immediately again. You're very quickly going to hit a ceiling if you keep jumping forward that way. If 12C is still really hard for you, it takes you 5-6 sessions to send, 13B is going to take a really long time in most cases, unless you just happen to find one that fits you absolutely perfectly. So the pyramid's not a bad thing. It just doesn't have to be the only thing.
Totally. Yeah. And I think this advice best fits the type of people who err towards the side of over preparing.
Yeah.
Like they really want to be ready. They're not sure, like, should I try it or not? Honestly, you can always just go up the thing. Like,
totally.
Let me tell you, as a guy who has gone up a lot of hard rock climbs that I had, air quotes, no business on.
Right.
Like, when I climbed 512, I went up like 513s and 13 pluses, and I was like, I want to feel what this is like.
Mm-hmm.
And you can try it once, and then, it'd be like I'd try it, come back 2 years later, and maybe now it's like I have a shot at it.
Right.
And that's okay.
Totally.
Plus, it's kind of fun to know what that's like.
Yeah, totally. We've got a few sort of bonus ones here. Let's they don't exactly fit the category of a like Bera-ism. Let's run through this list kind of quick, and then I have a bit of a wrench to throw into the works here. We've got Don't Let Go.
Classic.
That should be an obvious one.
If you don't let go, you can never fall.
Right. And one I really like is Fall Up.
Ooh, that's a good one.
What other ones do you have there?
Breathe.
Breathe. Yep.
That's a classic. Like,
Breathe is a fantastic one.
Yeah, I was just talking with someone the other day.
Don't forget to breathe.
Don't forget to breathe. Yeah. Like, this shouldn't be a thing, but it's a very big thing. I was talking with someone the other day. She was like, I hate when people remind me to breathe on a rock climb. I was like, well, you hold your breath? She was like, I do all the time. I was like, okay, well, maybe you should just take a breath.
Do you pass out regularly on rock climbs?
Exactly. She was like, I heard I do it though. But yeah, breathe. Try hard.
Yeah. Try hard, try harder.
Yeah. That is classic, like kind of obvious advice. Man, It's one that helps me all the time. Like so often, anytime someone's like, hey, have you tried trying harder? I'm like, no, not enough.
Yeah.
Let me do it right now.
Totally. You have others?
No, not really.
That's all I got. But here's my wrench to throw in. One of my favorite rappers, maybe my favorite rapper, current rapper anyway, POS from Doomtree in Minneapolis. There's a line in one of his songs where he says, "It takes what it takes. A little vague, but I'll make it work. Thanks." And it takes what it takes is kind of one of these phrases, but he's right. It's a little bit vague. And I think we can make it work, but we can also make it better. And I think we can make some of these phrases better. They'll never stick. We'll never say them out loud. But I'm curious. Let's run through this list and see how we would make them better. So let's start with the bonuses. What about breathe? What's the actual better advice there?
Oh goodness, you really threw a wrench in this one. The advice is like plan your breathing.
Yeah.
Like breathing is a sequence. Like you can
totally
use it to create tension. Like you look at powerlifters, they hold their breath, create a ton of tension. It's also protective tension for them. But there are so many people, you can do the opposite. You can create relaxing breath that makes you move more fluidly. You can time breath. You can like make yourself more stressed, like in a good elevated, like arousal type of thing for competition, but you can also make yourself like less stressed.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, I used to climb with this guy who I remember watching him on Rocket Dog, I think, at the Motherlode, the 12B thing there. It's got a low, like slopey crux.
Yeah.
And then you get this surfboard jug that you hang out on. And then it's just like crimp paddling for a while. And he would get through the crux, the low crux, the boulder problem, get to the surfboard, and he would relax. And it would look like he's sending. And it would look like he's totally comfortable. And then right before he would leave the surfboard, he'd go, and he would pull onto the crimps and immediately fall. And I was just like, what is happening here? And it occurred to me that he was like gearing up for super fight.
It's going to war.
And he had a few seconds of it, and then it was done. And once we got him to not do that, not hyperventilate, and not like get his arousal state to 1,000 before he pulled into this, like, you know, relatively moderate, like 5'11" crimp paddling. Once he did that, he sent. So breathing can mean a lot of different things. So I think your cue of sequencing your breathing is for sure the better way.
Yeah. You know, so for me, learning the importance of breathing came from, I did yoga for about like 6 months while I was in college.
I did yoga for about 60 minutes.
Nice. Oh, it's a good session. It's a start. And I had a buddy he was like, you know, yoga taught me a lot about breathing through movement. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it was something I'd wanted to get into. So it was offered through the college. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll go do that. Did it for like 6 months, and it really taught me how to move and breathe together. So here's what was interesting about that. It leveled up my climbing in the sense that I suddenly knew how to breathe continuously for power endurance climbing specifically. And a part of me wonders if that's why like that still, like that style for me comes very naturally. Like every move is the same kind of pace, almost staccato.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I went to the new and I climbed with Nick Smith, and this would have been 2011. And I remember watching him climb on this thing that was like boulder problem, like boulder problem, rest, easy climbing, boulder problem, easy climbing kind of thing. And the way he changed his breathing was so immediate and deliberate.
Yeah.
I never seen it before in my life. Like he could be on these really smooth flowing steep jugs, and then like you could just hear like a real sharp change in his breathing for hard crux climbing, and his whole body shifted. Like it went from relaxed to this like tension, and it was amazing. Because for me, I could stay in this like 80% cruiser zone, like Golden Boy style. Like for me, that was just, and it still is just a money zone for me. Like anytime I find a boulder route like that is just how I'll climb well. And upregulating or downregulating has like always been a little bit challenging. But seeing him just, and I even commented when he came down, I was like, that's amazing. I was like, you can just like rev up and slow down so fast. And he was like, yeah, you do it with breathing.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about how gymnastics might have affected my breathing. Because I'm also a person I'm pretty good at the like really down regulated breathing up to 75-80%. And then upregulating is much harder for me. It's a thing I've really had to focus on and learn and be really deliberate about. And I think that's because in gymnastics, when you're learning a new skill that's really hard for you, it's by itself, you know, it's the only thing you're learning. And then you don't put it into a routine until you have it pretty dialed in, until you've brought it down to 75 or 80%.
Interesting.
So I was never having to change my regulation much through my routines. I could down regulate in the moments where there's less tension, you know, but very rarely going higher than 75 or 80%.
Interesting. And that makes complete sense. Like, you know, if you're doing a routine and you're scored based on like kind of how well you're performing it, you're not going to go up near your physical limit, like
Yeah.
it would probably look like trash, the rate of how your success rate wouldn't be very great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had never considered that.
Yeah, and even when like, we watch these, like vault, for instance, is you do one thing and it's done.
Yeah.
So you can try harder things there, but even then in competition, you're not often going to try your absolute hardest thing that you've done in practice once.
Yeah.
It's going to be something you think you can land relatively often.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about try hard or try harder?
Am I answering all these?
I can give you what I think about it.
Yeah, why don't you start on this one?
I actually like the cue for some people of try softer. So I think, try appropriately. Give the appropriate amount of effort is
Do the right thing at the right time.
better. Exactly. Do the right thing at the right time. Because some people try hard all the time. They're constantly giving as much effort as they can muster, when in fact it might be better to not give as much effort to this section and save it for the next section. I think that's a real problem for a lot of people.
Yeah. That just reminded me of our buddy Eddie. He was climbing with Adam Taylor in the red. Adam, who established pretty much all the hard rock climbs. Eddie went up Lucifer for the first time. And he said the whole time Adam was just yelling at him. He's like, stop trying so hard. He's like, you just look like you're just trying way too hard on all this. You need to relax. Granted, Adam's a monster.
Yeah, he has the ability to relax up there.
Yeah, but it was also the case of Eddie was just like, oh, this is 14C. I need to squeeze real hard.
Yeah.
But if you're going to link all that together, you need to find the little bit more relaxed method through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, try the right amount at the right time. That's good advice. Real solid.
Fits right in here.
I think it really depends on the person. Like for me, and I've actually just thought of this, and I might make this a new rule for myself, but it maybe is just, every fifth time you pull onto the wall or something like that, try trying really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I default to, can I do this better?
Yeah.
Which, I don't think is always the worst thing, but I can take it to that extreme. And so it could just be, checking in every now and then, or if it's, I don't like number of goes as much, like maybe it's a 10-minute timer. Every time a 10-minute timer goes off, it's like, oh, have you tried hard lately?
Yeah. And I think it could also be really important to like add effort level into the kind of umbrella of better, so oftentimes when we hear better, we think of, really smooth and really easy, but better also can be just giving a really scrappy high level effort to this move, so putting it under that umbrella is also important. I think fall up and don't let go kind of end up being the same for me when it comes to making them better, because it's not, that advice doesn't always apply. Like sometimes letting go is fine, if you're working out moves and, I just worked out this section, rather than clip the next bolt, I want to do this big link, so I'm just going to let go and drop down, and I'm going to try this big link now.
Yeah.
So there's certainly times when letting go is important. I also think that don't let go has this sort of the same connotation as this shirt that I'm wearing, don't hold back. And when Lana suggested that phrase, we debated it a little bit.
What?
Because there's always yeah, can you imagine Lana and I debating? And because I think there's always the other side where sometimes maybe you do want to hold back and not give everything. Sometimes maybe letting go is good. What if it's, the person who's trying really hard has some crazy expectation they need to let go of, There's all sorts of connotations where these phrases can go wrong. And falling up, I think, is one of those as well. Like, maybe now's not the time to be lunging wildly. Maybe that gives you this false sense of, oh, I just made it half a move further, so what I did below this is right. Even though you got in a position where you had to lunge wildly because you did the prior move in a bad way, but you don't notice it because you fell up, and that's progress.
Yeah.
I'm reaching here.
I mean, I like what you're saying.
But I also like to tear apart phrases.
So it's understandable. I mean, there are always going to be, exclusions to the rules. But yeah, if you're on red point, go. Like,
yeah.
Man, I can't say this enough.
Or an onsite.
Yeah, if you're in a safe zone,
exactly.
You got a good belayer. Yeah, get after it. Yeah. Like, that is more often than not. Yeah, I feel like this rule applies to a lot of people in red point mode or onsite mode. Below that, what you brought up, I think it's important to work out tactics.
Yeah.
But yeah, make that decision on the ground more than anything, and tell your belayer, tell them to keep you honest. If this is your significant other, maybe be careful.
Yes.
I have had a couple belays where
absolutely be careful.
They're like, hey, don't let me take. I'm like, okay. They get up and they're like, take, still on point. I'm like, are you sure? I said take. All right, we're taking. Okay, cool. That was a good high point.
Yeah, exactly. What about if it feels big, get your feet higher?
I said what I said.
I think this is interesting because oftentimes, like, if it's a big move, some big moves just work better with your feet lower.
Yeah, they can.
It's a different kind of jump, different kind of big move, different kind of tension. So it's not always the answer, but I think it's good advice to at least work through.
Yeah, and it's a common one that I feel like I see more and more. I think that this one I kind of slept on, in that we kind of made our list and I was like, oh yeah, like I was thinking about when Porter told me this, but thinking about this now and thinking about climbing in the gym, things are tailored for people so well these days in the gym.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing. I love good gym setting. It's fun. It's enjoyable. But often what ends up happening is when people don't have the obvious choice, they're just like, oh, this is bad setting. Or like, they're like, oh, well, this just isn't for me. Clearly everyone else can reach and I can't. And this is even just for like people average size humans are saying these same things.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, well, you have other options. They might be a little fucked up, but like they're there. You should probably do them. So I think this one might actually be more applicable now than before even.
Okay. I can see that.
But wait, so how are we making it better? I forgot.
I'm just saying, if it feels big, consider getting your feet higher.
Okay.
Explore that option.
Yeah. Agreed. Another way I like to approach this, I used to climb with someone who, she was an amazing climber. And I think she was maybe 5'3", could hold tension incredibly in extended positions. And it's funny because I would like do these moves sometimes and I'd be like, oh, I don't know if my foot's going to stay on. And, maybe I need a higher foot or whatever. I might have to jump. And then she would do it keeping the foot on.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, hold on. Like, you are very strong, but my reach is so much further than yours that like my foot should be able to stay for this.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do you do this? Like, I was like, you are so good at sizing up moves. And she was like, oh, well, what I do is I just climb in from another boulder or I get someone to boost me. I'll grab the hold and I'll see if my toe can physically span.
Right.
Like, so
I do this a lot now.
Yeah. So she'll pretty much just like act as a human like protractor, just like, a little ruler, and kind of like span around and see what can she physically reach. And she's like, okay, like I create this arc with my legs. This is what I can possibly reach. I now have 2 or 3 options.
Right.
Versus, and that's a really good way to break things down and just immediately eliminate ideas.
Totally. If you're on a bad hold, keep moving. I think you kind of hit this one already when we were talking about people freezing or people slowing way down. Sometimes that's the answer. Like if it's a bad hold, you have to take in a really particular way. Sometimes you do have to slow down, and that's totally fine. Then you keep moving. So all of these are, if you're on a bad hold, keep moving at the correct pace.
Which is fast every time.
And if you want to climb X, you have to try X. I think we also hit on this one where it's, yes, you have to try it, but you also have to be prepared to be able to climb it.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of those things of, if you're wondering if you're ready or not, or if you think you need more preparation, go try it. We talked about in one of the recent episodes, like one of my favorite tactics for sport climbers is anytime you're trying a new route, go to chains twice before you make any sort of judgment on this climb. Like if you do that, because what happens so often, and I mentioned this earlier, like, you go halfway up a route and you're like, oh, I don't know, this feels hard, I'm not sure. Like, if it's your first time on a rock climb, it's going to be hard. You're going to have to learn new things. You have to figure out the beta. Also, it's not uncommon. You might have already done the bulk of the hard bit. It might be victory climbing to the top, and you don't know that if you don't go.
Yep.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And, there are two essays in my book, The Hard Truth, that are seemingly in opposition to each other, that are advice for newer climbers or for, people who want to climb harder. I think that's, the titles. And basically the first essay says, stop trying to climb harder, master the things you're already climbing on. And then the next essay says, go try the harder, most ridiculous thing that you can imagine, then step it back a notch and try those things.
Yeah.
And I think both things are true. It's not just one advice all the time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's a really important takeaway. I mean, for all of these, like,
except for past the cruxes.
Yes, to be a great climber, you need to get good at passing cruxes.
Oh, science.
Yes. But yeah, there's going to be gray area with all advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Following any one of these things to its extreme end is not going to be helpful. But, learning when to lean on them, that can really get you a long way. It's like, honestly, just even, I've met people who've taken falling upward to heart to such an extreme that it's like, man, you have awful, awful tactics.
Yeah, totally.
But I'll be damned, you commit.
Yeah, they're like always trying to slap the buzzer.
Oh man, they go for it, and they just get by on the skin of their teeth so often, and it's amazing. They're just the scrappiest climbers there's ever been. You got to remember
Dahlia.
Dahlia. I was going to say
shout out Dahlia.
Sometimes as they're belayer, you're going to have to remember their beta for them. Shout out Dahlia. But man, they're going to there is no lack of effort there, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah. I love it.
So yeah, take these, figure out where they can be helpful. If you find one that really resonates with you, tell your partners. Tell them to remind you. Like, man, I try and do this with my partners. Like, hey, if you see me just stuck in the infinite wheel of beta processing, tell me to try hard.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's the switch of, we're operating at 70%. Let's just try really hard once. Yeah. I may be able to just do this move and get this done.
Right. I've figured out 15 options now, but the 16th option might be the better one.
All of them are 0.25% different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you have other, terrible advice that's actually really great advice, post it on the Instagrams and let me know. You'll be able to see the post for this episode and let us know if there are ones we forgot. I would love to hear them. And you know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us on all the social medias at Power Company Climbing. And give us some terrible advice on the Twitter. We're not going to take it because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, power, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power. This time to build 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 power. This time to build. 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 This time.
Cause Jah is the sinister character.
Structure audio.